Did you ever want to go to Hogwarts as a kid? I mean, I know when I was reading the books, it's a world that I would have loved to been able to explore, and I think this is the closest we've ever been able to get to that. You get to basically go to Hogwarts as a fifth-year student, and you're able to do everything you kind of would expect to be able to do as a student of Hogwarts. Not just learning spells, but making potions, herbology, even bestiology, interacting with some of the magical creatures, and some that we've never seen before, from the Harry Potter universe. During your adventures of the grounds, you'll also be able to engage in combat with things like goblins and dark wizards, spiders, all manner of creatures as well. I mean, it's sort of the whole package. Now, this is probably what you describe as an open world RPG. It does have some puzzles and some soft sort of problem solving elements that have been built into it, but the crux of it sort of lives and dies on this kind of almost Dark Souls-esque combat placed in a Harry Potter universe, and they have nailed that. But I haven't really heard anyone talking about something that caught me completely off guard, something that I didn't expect, and it sort of felt like it hung almost like a shadow over this game despite its technical brilliance. It comes up almost in every category as we do the review, and we'll talk about it a bit more on completion in the conclusion, but I never expected it, and I don't know how I feel about it. But we've got to start somewhere, and as always, start with the gameplay. So with this one, we were playing about 48 hours, roughly, is what it took us to do a complete playthrough on the hardest setting, as always. Now, bit of a different one though, because a lot of time does get soaked up by the immense amount of side content that there is.
It's too much!
So you could easily belt the main story if you were committed to it in a fraction of that time. The main story itself is a bit padded, not by its actual complexity or depth or content, but usually by level caps or other things that are thrown in deliberately to delay your progression a little bit more. Overall, pretty smooth. One of the core components in a game like this is going to be the combat. I mean, this is what you're doing most of the game.
Very good, but the best way to practice is by dueling. We'll start with you two. Duelists, take your marks.
Time for a proper Hogwarts welcome.
Flinging spells or plants, or engaging with hostile enemies and entities in lots of different ways. The easiest thing I could probably akin it to from my experience would actually be Dark Souls, if you'd taken the approach to combat and put it into a Harry Potter universe. And like I said before, they've really nailed it. How it feels to be able to move around the battlefield by basically teleporting and then flinging some spells and then throwing together combinations while dodging attacks, even with a parry system. It is fun. I mean, I think back to other RPGs, especially Harry Potter ones, and they've never really done well in this space. So it's very exciting to see someone who's probably played those ones and gone, you know, this isn't a good experience from a player perspective, and put so much time and effort into crafting something that resembles a system that is enjoyable to use. There's basically two types of combat. Wizard on wizard, wizard on everything else. Wizard on everything else, pretty simple. Fling the spells that you want against enemies. Now, don't get me wrong, certain spells will be able to interact with them in different ways, giving you a much more refreshing approach to combat than just spamming spells. A really easy example is the ability, once you master it, to lift the frog and then cut its tongue off if you time it right, or drive the giant spider's head into the ground as it lunges at you. Things like that that keep things fresh and exciting. Wizard on wizard comes down to really matching, and what I mean by that is they'll use a certain color shield, red, yellow, and then you'll use that same color spell to break that shield, and then you can engage with them as a everything else enemy. A room for improvement type territory. Like, an easy example is a lot of the spells just feel and operate quite similar, despite different effects. How you use them and how it ultimately feels to use them isn't very dynamic. For example, whether I lift someone or I freeze them, ultimately they're just stuck in place. Visually quite different and exciting, but that's where it ends. And yes, there are some combinations to take advantage, for example, lift someone then slam them into the ground, or freeze them and then shatter them. And it's very cool that the game has done this, but if you've got 50 plus hours of gameplay with, and I didn't do all the side content, there's so much more to do, it does after a long enough time become, I will just delete you in the most efficient way possible. And then this lines into the next problem. The creatures are very samey. They've got some sort of codex of about truckloads of different enemies. But the trouble is, ultimately it's wizard, spider, goblin, and then a few sub-variations. Yeah, trolls come in every now and again, but realistically, and it's all the same. Like, you don't get to sort of experience, for example, how The Witcher approaches combat.
Woodland dragon. Draconid oil. Almost midday. Daywalker's potion. Those claws look like rip a man in half. Stone skin.
How I would entangle myself in combat with a ghoul versus a sword wielder versus a werewolf, how I prepare and go into that battle is fundamentally different. And this is one of the things that really sets Witcher apart from most games, let alone games in this genre. Whereas here, realistically, like, yeah, I know I can cut a frog's tongue off if I time everything right, or I can just spam the same 4 spells on it with the occasional dodge. And then once you sort of master those abilities, that's it. And the enemies never adapt to that either. At the end of the day, ultimately, the creatures feel very samey when you're in a 50-hour playthrough, and we didn't even do all the side content like we mentioned. It's just a long game, which is a good thing, but ultimately, human, spider, frog, goblin, troll, kinda it. Yeah, there's some variations, but they all playing the same, and the easiest example of this is the Dark Wizards. There's at least, off the top of my head, Executioner, Assassin, so on and so forth, but they all feel the same to fight, and they all engage with you sort of the same way. Even the named bosses that aren't the main bosses, let's call them world bosses if you're familiar with other games, they're sort of that level. Like, that's just not gonna happen.
Any you want me to pass on to your mum? There you are.
Well, you died. There's just another Dark Wizard. There's nothing special or exciting or unique about them. I mean, most of them don't even have some sort of unique dialogue. And it just starts to make the game, with amazing mechanics to play with, very unexciting to use those mechanics in the world it's given us. And it's a bit of a missed opportunity, I feel. And then this is where we get into another problem. Even on the hardest setting, the reality is, it's an assassin game. What? It's a Harry Potter? No. It's Assassin's Creed with wands. I cannot sum this up enough. Stealth is broken. On the hardest setting, we only died 20 times? I think it was 21 times? And the reason, mostly, is once you get a few points in stealth, you move as fast as you basically move out of stealth. And you just make your way through, walking up, stone, 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 on your way to the next objective, just on my way. And once you sort of understand that, like, we breezed the last hours of gameplay because I just didn't find anyone anymore. I was done just fighting the same wizard or the same goblin or the same spider. And I just made the decision to go to the end, and that's what I did. I went invisible and I went to the end. First.
Hurry!
Wrecked. Oh! let's say you don't want to do that. Let's say you just really want to engage in the combat, but you're finding some people a bit more difficult. There's an immortality potion. You cannot die.
Dude, I'm invincible. Do you not get that? I take no damage when I am in this form. I cannot be hurt.
We tested it with the boss. We just sat there and punched the potion, and sure enough, we were actually immortal. Which, hey, you know, it does what it says on the tin. Whoever invented this must be rich. Because honestly, I don't know how anyone in this universe dies. Carrying a couple of these bad boys on you, Voldemort can sit there and sputter for all I care. I've got stone lava skin, and apparently I am immortal. And from all I can see, I was. Now look, I'm not against having something like this in the game. An armor buff, a damage resist, these mechanics have existed forever. But a flat, you are immortal now, when you can stack it that high and it's that easy to craft. I mean, again, we're on the hardest setting, and between the stealth and the immortality, you've just removed any challenge from the game. There's lots of side quests, little puzzles, things like the Merlin trials, but outside of getting more bag space, there's no point. And they're all very samey and dry very quickly. A couple little puzzle rooms, which were fun, but again, limited and uninspired. It sort of felt like the mechanics had been built, and they just didn't have time to really use them to do anything above and beyond what's sort of like the bare minimum using the mechanics would do. And this goes into another really, really interesting side quest sort of element. Being able to capture and tame beasts, and then breed them, and use their ingredients to upgrade your loot. What an amazing fleshed out system. It's all done in the Room of Requirement. In and of itself, another piece of side content that you can explore and use. Where you can make potions and grow your plants. It's so exciting and amazing, the stuff that you can do in this space. You can change the ambience, the look, entire use of the room. I mean, what an amazing tool that's been built for you to sort of play with. But for what? Your loot doesn't do anything. It just gives you an armor value number that you don't need because you're immortal, or you can instant kill everyone. So that doesn't matter. So it comes down to visuals, but that's not affected by the room. You can basically just capture a piece of gear, or find a piece of gear, and then you've got that look forever, which, by the way, I'm not knocking. That's a good thing. And in fact, one of the other praises that we missed earlier, this is one of the smartest RPGs when it comes to being able to customize your character's look. There is nothing more frustrating, and we all know this, than finding an amazing piece of gear that looks dumb, or worse, looks stupid when combined with your other gear. And being able to change any component of your look while keeping its stats is something that I loved, and I think most of us welcome across the board, with few exceptions. So it's a good thing. But again, that exists outside of the Room of Requirement. You don't need to do anything in there, and you don't have to really explore that part of the game. And there's no real benefit of doing it either. I mean, I enjoyed it from a personal perspective, but I could have just set up my potion benches and my herb benches and called it a day. And that comes to another weird entity within the game. There's so much you can do in the Room of Requirement, but there's no storage. Even if you wanted to keep something, there's nowhere to put it. And yeah, redundant when it has no point anyway, and you can keep the look for something else. But you can tell they understood they hadn't really built out loot that was worth your time. So there's no point storing it anyway. Oh! And this comes to sort of the next one, and this is going to come up in Immersion and Impact down the road. But with a game like this, with the talk of good and evil, because there is sort of that split, simple, you are good or bad type approach to a lot of the dynamics within the game. There's no morality system. There's no impact whatsoever of any of your decisions. For the most part, we were in Slytherin trying to make some really evil calls. I killed and tortured more people, goblins, and animals than I care to mention. I literally bullied other students if I got the opportunity, and no one cared. And there was no impact of it. And I might as well have been the best student there ever was. It's a bit disappointing when you draft such a clear sort of good-evil scenario, you can't even toy with it. It's just non-existent. I mean, up until and including the point where I could actually literally kill someone, boss in this case, killing Curse, in front of the most goody two-shoes student there was.
You should not use dark magic. See how she feels about this.
Do you really believe that you are somehow...
Who was actually out here to stop these criminals just being criminals. And one, no bother to her whatsoever, she was happy with this. Two, the guy didn't die, because it turned out he had to be in a cutscene. And for all of it, no one was bothered. I mean, not even the police officer of Harry Potter that sort of came down after I executed the dude. It was just like, oh, guess I'll take this dude to jail, don't know how he's alive. It's just surreal, given what they've sort of tried to do. We'll get into that a little bit more on Immersion Impact, because there's a lot to play with there. And finally, no specialty system. And what I mean by this is, you've got spells, potions, herbology, bestiology. They've built the foundations of all these different mechanics that are actually really fun to engage with, introduced at a really good pace, in a way that's not boring or dull or overwhelming and too much. Like, it's actually expertly done. But you're just gonna go sling spells. Yeah, you can drink the occasional immortality potion or throw a cabbage at an enemy. They don't like ice What do you want from me? But ultimately, given how diverse the Wizarding world is, and how much people do seem to sort of lean into certain parts of the Wizarding world, ultimately it's just going to be throwing combat spells. And when you've got these mechanics and these things built out, it would have been really interesting to sort of see them flesh out a bit stronger. So being able to utilize some of the things, especially potions, in a more interesting and diverse way. Being able to just throw a couple ingredients together, mix it, it's almost like the Skyrim approach, and just seeing what you get as a result. Even potentially being able to get some offensive stuff inside the potions, outside of just some very generic things. It's just a bit shallow for what you would typically expect from something that does hold itself out as an RPG. Look, all in all, the combat's solid. The mechanics are great. The side tasks are excellent. The remove requirement is a sick playground. There's a lot of good in here. And that's why, despite a lot of negatives like the dry repetitive enemies and not utilizing a lot of the mechanics and systems that they've built to their fullest, at the end of the day, I ended up with a 69 for my score of it. And the community, well, they weren't really that far off either, on 78. Which gives us a total for the gameplay of about 73.5. And to be honest, I think that's spot on. They've really nailed so much. And the biggest issues that ultimately we have is it just didn't use enough of it, or give us enough to use it with, which only makes me hopeful for the future, but unfortunately for this game, it does hurt it. But it's enough about gameplay, which was the longest section, I swear, maybe. Let's get into graphics and sound. Graphics and sound in this game has been, for the most part, nailed. Oh my god, it has done very, very well. And I think you would ultimately be kidding yourself to go so far as to really give it too hard of a time. Especially when we've got things in the industry, and you can never forget it, that are modern AAAs, things like Andromeda.
All right, what happened?
To who?
To whom? And your goddamn father. Sorry, my face is tired from dealing with everything. And right now, I just want to know what happened with Alec.
And we all remember that experience. Or things like well, we all remember that experience. Hopefully, it's just having a bit of a moment. And it crashed. This is awkward.
CPU survivor. Before he's back. I was like my house off the Taco Bell. Oof. Oof. Can't get past the loading screen.
Those frames, plus.
And so, for it to come out, and at least on PC, and in my experience, not just not have a lot of these graphical and sound issues, but to absolutely nail so much is phenomenal. So, an easy example would be just the sounds and the visuals on the spells. Even the most basic spell, just the flingy flingy.
Well, maybe just Lupin's a good example. Yes. That looks so cool.
Excellent!
That's really reminiscent of like how they were doing the spell casting in like the last two movies. It looks so like crisp and sharp. But it, like you see how there's a little bit of camera shake and movement and impact to it. Like even this basic spell feels like I don't want to get hit by that. I don't want to get hit by that at all.
It feels good, it looks good, it sounds good, and it makes it fun to use, it makes it immersive, and you can tell so much effort has been put into those details. From every step, from the start of the cast animation, through to how the spell looks, down right through to the impacts. And it goes all the way through to some of the more advanced spells. I still remember casting the Killing Curse for the very first time.
All day? Mind you, suppose it.
How it sounded, how it felt, almost that hollow drone at the end of it. It had the weight of I deleted a life, and it was really projected by the sound and visuals every step of the way.
Bruh, you're are trash. Oh, she just got deleted.
What's the purple one? Oh! But it's also down to the little details as well. Little ambient noises when you're in different areas. The sounds inside the castle as you move through. You hear the students. You hear the hustle and bustle. And, you know, in terms of the sound and audio design, I don't think we've seen something this good in such a long time.
Yeah, look, I rate, Peeves. The haunted toilets.
By far the biggest win when it comes to the sound design is the music and the music choices. From the opening time you see the castle, I mean, no one that's a Harry Potter fan saw and heard this and wasn't like, I think I was on the verge of shedding just that one single tear of, you did it. You did it good. Not to the point where it felt fan servicey, too early, or to the point where it was overhanded. It just was so well done. There was even quests where you finish them, and I remember saying it on stream, where it was I think it was one of Natty's quests from memory, and we're flying the griffins, and turned around and was like, between the music, the dialogue, the sound of us flying through. Like, it's almost like watching the end of a main story point in a movie. It was magical, and I use the word deliberately. Like, that is built not just from everything else, but from sound and audio and music choice and how it's implemented. And these guys have killed it. Christ!
Hogwarts Express must be returning from an unscheduled run.
AKA, we wanted to make it more cinematic, but I'll let it slide. It's cool. It's cool. Like, they nail that feel. Like, you feel like you're just like at the conclusion of like one of the book's like main story arcs. Like, you just rescued it, you dodged the bad guys, you're flying past the school over the train. Like, it's cinematic, the music is perfect. It's cool. Like, there's no point being salty about it.
See us from the castle.
And honestly, the only big detractors I've really got when it comes to graphics and sound is probably that, like most RPGs, some of the facial animations and characters are a little bit strange, especially the main character.
It's a pity we didn't have a bit more time to spend on spellcasting. I presume you've been practicing the spells we worked on.
I have, Professor.
Well, I'm quite sure I've never seen anyone take so quickly to a second-hand wand. You'll be a force to be reckoned with when you get your own.
Thank you, Professor Fig. I appreciate you working with me before you turn.
She looks terrifying.
And it's reflected in the scores. So I've given it an 82. The community so close on this one, an 88. And that gives us a total all up of about 85. And I think that's really well deserving. The music choice, the sound design really pushed it. The graphics were solid. I think if the graphics could have gone the next level up to really wow us, or some of the animations were a little bit better, especially on those facial details, this would have been one of the best audio-visual games, not just this year, but in a long time. And I cannot overstate that enough. I'd love to see more games go to this level of detail and effort, because it really takes the experience to that next level. But for now, Immersion and Impact.
We do.
Not to worry, we are still flying half a ship.
Not to worry, we are still flying half a ship.
That's really cool. She can see the minstrels now.
So Immersion and Impact is kind of weird. There's a lot of good and there's a lot of bad. Overall, the weight of some of the good and the significance that it does carry it. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Let's get into the bad first, as efficiently as we can. My god, the AI in some of these cutscenes and interactions, especially the Dark Wizards. An easy example is there's a fight with a dragon and it goes to burn everyone. I would be moving.
How is it that the two kids are the only ones to think that casting a shield might be a good idea?
And you've got two 5th year students versus adult Dark Wizards who should be combat proficient. This is kind of what they do. Worse, they're poachers. They captured the dragon to begin with. And even then, out of a room filled with these people that are expert evil adults that capture dragons, no one put on a shield except for the kids when it's shooting some fire. And worse, the kids are in the shield as it slowly does it from left to right through the kids, and even the guy on the far right, like far side, isn't like dead. Oh, shield's a good idea. No, he just waits his turn. And it's moments like this that crop up again and again and again that just really break what could otherwise be a really immersive experience. It then goes a step further. Look, I'm all for customization. I had some interesting looks during my playthrough, and being able to do that and explore that is so much fun. But time and a place type thing, it felt like a game that needed two systems. School uniform, that allowed you to tweak within certain bounds that still made sense, and outside of school. So that when you were in Hogwarts, you didn't enter cutscenes that had a classroom of everyone wearing their uniforms, and then me in some sort of weird gothic outfit wearing a duck bill. Like, it just completely breaks the experience. We've all been to a school. Most of us have been to schools with uniforms. And if you go into a school with a uniform, I mean, you can't even wear glasses in a classroom or a hat, let alone a duck bill mask. Niffler, sorry, Niffler, don't hurt me. And then this sort of just steps into what we were talking about a little bit in gameplay earlier on, with no morality system. It impacts the immersion heavily. A really good example of this is probably a Harry Potter universe issue, but it really comes to light here. No one has issues with me pushing someone off a cliff, turning them into an exploding barrel, detonating them, killing 3 of their friends, turning them into ice and then shattering them. Like, all of that's okay. And I'm a kid, ultimately. And then this then steps straight into the curses, the unforgivable curses. By the time I unlocked them, man, I was using these things as my main spells. I'd go into a room, torture someone. I had the talent where as long as they were cursed, if I hit them, it spread to everyone else in the room. Then I had the talent where if I used the killing curse, I'd kill anyone that was affected by that. So with these 2 spells, I could murder 15 people in one go, and that's okay. And when you're doing stuff like this in front of teachers, professors, other students, and everyone's cool with it, worse, you then see someone like one of the main bads throw out a killing curse. Like, curses are bad! You should not use dark magic. See how she feels about this.
Do you really believe that
You're obviously just not paying enough attention, eh? Like, it is just really breaking the experience, and it's super unfortunate that with, again, the foundation that they have, they didn't use it as an opportunity to explore some of these powers, some of their limitations, some of their interactions, and even sort of use it to curtail what you can learn from who and how it's meant to be applied. Realistically, one of the teachers turns around, and I think it was with Bombarda, and they go, "Oh, be careful with that, you could hurt someone," and
I take it you're ready to learn your...
I completed your assignment, Professor. I'm ready to learn Bombarda now.
Good. Now, this spell comes with a caveat. It should only be used when necessary.
sure enough, I deleted someone moments later, and it just feels a little bit weird when a spell like that ultimately doesn't have much use when you've got things like Reparo, or Ascendo, or Levioso, or the push one, Depulso, all these other things that can move obstacles, interact with the world. Why do I need to cause a literal explosion somewhere? Like, what safe, sensible child interaction does that make sense with? I mean, most countries don't let your kids play with fireworks. This is giving me remote detonate C4. Why is this okay?
Bombard
has been planted. Terrorists win.
The simple way you could sort of interact with that is, for example, God forbid you cast the killing curse in the middle of school or something like that. Simply put, it just plays a cutscene. You get taken to Azkaban after being expelled. Game over. Load your last save. It's drastic, but at the very least it keeps the immersion and it makes me sort of feel like there's something here, and that's quite simple to implement. And then it'll encourage me to use these things as I should be if I want to go down this path in the dark corners of the world where no one else is watching except well, my victim. The House Cup. It plays no part in the game whatsoever. None. And it's super disappointing. I still remember one of the very early Harry Potter games. When you earned points, lost points, you looked at the hall, you saw them changing. Like, it was kind of made me feel like I was part of something bigger. My house. It made me want to sort of do certain actions because I cared about my house, how my house performed. Here it's just whatever house you're in wins. Doesn't really matter. Don't worry about that. And it made it feel so hollow. And this is where the story comes in. It's just so inconsistent, the main story specifically. Are you a 5th year student at a school learning the basics of magic? I mean, we do see a lot of these year 1 spells being taught and rehashed. Or are you the strongest aura that ever lived, wiping out the local dark magicians that even the police or ministry, I guess, representatives can't even tangle with? Fighting ancient magic goblins with untold power. And it just doesn't line up between the two realities that have been meshed together to make this story function. Look, we've all read the books. You got Harry Potter doing similar stuff to a certain degree. But realistically with him, it's very lucky a lot of the time. Still a bit of plot armor, but his friends are there, other circumstances help, and his enemies and story really breaks out over years of slow escalating challenges. Whereas here, you've gone from 5th year to fighting goblin, metal, dragon, ancient magic creature in your 1st year. The scale up is significant.
But this will allow me to control it, just as I can control the Inferi.
Control? I had to fight Inferi all the way.
What have the two of you done?
But that's not to say all of the story is bad. I mean, the main story is pretty cardboard, don't get me wrong. Nothing you haven't seen before, and in fact, I would even go so far as to say quite drab. But some of the side stuff, specifically Sebastian's quest, is phenomenal. Sebastian as a character, Ominous as a character, his sister, how they interact with the world, and then this treading path down a dark descent that's not only sensible and you can understand, you can even empathize with it to a certain degree, seeing it slowly spiral out of control. That's interesting storytelling. And honestly, Sebastian's story for me is the story of this game. The goblins are the side quest, even though it's longer. And you can see that in some of his bigger moments. Specifically, the moment where he obviously has a bit of a falling out with his uncle.
I won't let her suffer! Avada Kedavra! What have I done?
Bulldo!
Bruh. All for nothing.
Even with the main story trying to drag it down, some of the other set piece moments and things like Sebastian's story absolutely carry the immersion and the impact that this game brings to the table. I had to give it an 88, and the community wasn't far off on an 84, so that gives this one an 86 all up. And again, really well deserved, minus its flaws.
Whoa. Lucky this plant thing's here, really. Whoa!
we're on our way phasing out game specific as a category, because it ends up being so closely tied to immersion impact. This is one of the last reviews that will have this component. If you want more information, go to Discord, or eventually there's a YouTube video coming out explaining this system, but it is still here for this one. Now, game specific, obviously here, is super heavily tied to how the RPG elements really interact with what we understand of the Harry Potter universe, and it nails it. You move through caves, pull out your wand, Lumos, how it feels, how it sounds. You are in this world. You see the Mandrake, not the Mandrake, the Devil's Snare, pull away from the lights, and all you can do is remember those moments from the book. The Forbidden Forest feels heavy and gloomy. You feel the weight of what is around you in a way that you just don't elsewhere in the game, and it lives exactly how you see it in the movies and feel it in the books as you get deeper into the woods. And the castle is the epitome of it. Something within the castle, left and right, will just remind you of things from the books and the games, and it feels brought to life. Things like the staircase, finding the three-eyed witch to get into Hogsmeade, these sorts of things that you sort of really wanted to be able to utilize and explore and feel from the books, and the movies are here and done perfectly. I mean, honestly, it is the RPG that embodies Harry Potter. Being able to transmog your visuals, honestly, is awesome, and it allows you to just have your character in the game, how you want to be. Probably the biggest detractor from this category, ultimately, is the houses. There's no point. They are just a cosmetic thing, and it's the biggest disappointment because, look, sure, for most people, Gryffindor good, Slytherin bad, kind of the end of it, but it's not. And you get that in the books, even in the movies to a degree. When you read about how it is to be in Gryffindor, up there in their common room, the way they interact with each other, Slytherin hidden down in the bottom of the castle with all the weight that comes with it. And it, honestly, Slytherin's common room is awesome. I loved being able to see the lake. It felt exactly how I think it should feel to be a Slytherin common room, but outside of starting there, I never went back once, unless the game physically brought me back at the end of a season. Because there was no point. There's nothing to do there. There's nothing different between being there or any of the other common rooms. There's no real use of such an amazing visual set piece in your story. In fact, the only thing minus a bit of cosmetics that is affected is one quest, and it's a short one that doesn't really impact your character or the world building at all. And weirdly, I think it's Hufflepuffs is the best one because it takes you to Azkaban at least, an entirely different set piece that no one else gets to explore. It is a bit of a missed opportunity, and it not only breaks the role-playing elements, it really breaks the value of having it. I ended up giving it a 94, and the community, again, hot on my heels with an 84. So it's an average of 89, and it's super well deserved.
Seems my reputation precedes me. I was beginning to think no one was ever going to visit Rackham's Vault.
And why are you here?
No need for that. Just give me whatever it is you found here and we can let bygones be bygones.
You could probably by this point gather that it's a solid game, strong mechanics, overwhelmingly boring enemies, and a main story that is, I'd say, less than lackluster. It's dry and done. Goblin, evil, does evil things. Yeah, there's some ancient magic, and there's some moments in there, especially with Isadora, that almost bring it back to life. But nothing comes of it. I mean, even Fig dies, and that was, oh, didn't expect that. But hey, didn't care enough about him anyway. So it misses the mark in a lot of those elements, but all together, the package is so strong, from the audio to the gameplay to the side quests to a lot of the stuff that you get to do outside of the main story in this world that has been so lovingly crafted. If you are a Harry Potter fan, you are insane not to play this. If you're not a Harry Potter fan but you like RPGs, you're pretty crazy not to play this. It's solid. I'd recommend it on the hardest setting because even then there's next to no challenge. You will get your money's worth. Even at full price, this is an awesome experience. If you can pick it up on a sale, that much the better. So this is probably the best way to sort of get to what we were saying at the start. I'll give you the scores and then I'll explain what that shadow's about.
You are far from finished. Pass through the mourners.
I can't believe she's dead forever.
You found me, but you cannot undo what has been done. The magic of the stone can only conjure a shadow of my former self.
I ended up all up with an 83.25, very specific. And the community is basically copying my homework. They're on 83 as well, different variation. So surprisingly, the total score for this game is an 83, right up near the top, and I think one of the highest we've done to date. So what's the problem? Why didn't it go higher, and what's this shadow? It didn't go higher, and the shadow, they tie together. And it's super bizarre that I have not heard anyone talking about this. And I think a lot of game review platforms, they look at things just as the game and not so much the bigger picture. This felt like the most advanced demo I've ever played. We got to see a lot of amazing mechanics, some of them a bit more fleshed out than others, but no cohesive structure to pull them all together. And no ability to focus in on one and take it to the nth degree. It was a line test, a virtual slice. We got to see everything this game could be, and none of it employed in a way that really brought it together. Every single component, probably except for the gameplay, was a demo. The potions were a demo. Put a few things, here's a few potions, they do a few things, yep, that mechanic works. The beasts were a demo. Yep, you can capture them, yep, you can breed them, yep, you can harvest them, excellent demo. The crafting, if you want to call it that, upgrade system, the loot, again, demo. The only thing that was really completely fleshed out was the gameplay, and even that had elements that almost made it feel like a demo. The perks were quite simplistic. Instead of lifting one plus a couple around, there was no real advancement or development of the skills. And the overlaps where you could use, I can lift and then I could drop you, that was kind of it. There was, again, common sensey stuff, but nothing that really allowed you to expand the world or the fun. And I think part of that maybe is because it's a prequel and it limits what they can do. But a really easy example is Knights of the Old Republic. When I get lightning, in the first game, I can zap someone. And that was cool. Now, as the game expanded, and we get into things like Knights of the Old Republic 2, I could now not just choke, which we all see from the movies. There's a particularly intense ability where I could pick someone up, crush all the bones in their body, tossing them aside. Something we never see in the movie, but makes perfect sense. And that sort of development and evolution is missing here. I think if we had a more cohesive main story that took a bit more of a risk, built out the world a little bit more and let us explore it, gave us tools to try and create within this amazing world, like new potions, or explore for beasts that we hadn't seen that were a little bit more interesting than dog with long neck, I think it would have really, really allowed it to actually go from this absolutely top tier game to a masterpiece. And with that component missing, it just falls short of those 90 plus scores that it could have definitely achieved. But in the wider scheme of things, this gives me hope.
Rebellions are built on hope.
I sincerely hope this performs well enough to get us a sequel, because the foundation that they have laid is already so solid. How could you stuff it up? Take what you've got, build them out a little bit more, and then give us a better, more powerful story with more engaging characters. Minus Sebastian, who really lifts. Okay, there's a few that lift, but Sebastian. And this would actually be a masterpiece. And the cynic in me honestly feels like, in order to make that sequel easier to produce, they deliberately stopped short a lot of things that I felt like they were enjoying toying with. And they went, let's get this out. Let's get the proof of concept. And then people will be so hungry for the built-out features, there's no way they can't buy the second. Sometimes that's what it takes. But it doesn't change the fact that with this one, despite how well it is and how good it is a game, I do feel somewhat robbed. And I do feel like they just held back a little bit too much. Quidditch is the easiest example that everyone picked up on. You know, how do you have a Harry Potter game without Quidditch? And a few people said it feels DLC baity. Pay $20 to get the Quidditch on top, and I think really it's sequel baity. And another reason why I think they started at year 5, for example. 6, 7, there's your trilogy, which is, you know, a very stereotypical way to approach it. The cynic in me just struggles to ignore those details. But I can't deny the product that's been built and the quality of it. It's good. And with a little bit of extra attention on those components, I would be stunned if they butcher this and don't give us something even better right around the corner. I'll be watching this franchise, and I will be watching the developers to see what else they get up to. I think you should too. All in all, amazing experience. Pick it up, enjoy it for what it is, even with its flaws. There hasn't been something this good released in a long time, and I had a blast. Until next time though, hope you enjoyed the review and I hope you found it helpful. See you guys around for the next one.
Yes! Good. Take it all. Look at her. You know what must be done. Dude, I am snorting pain. And holding an empty bottle. Because I'm an alcoholic. Well, yeah, it is what it is.
Bro, I just beat that dragon. Did you guys see? I was totally fucked up.